Your competitors want to eat your lunch. So how do you stop them? Or better yet, how do you eat their lunch? Well, let's start with, do you even have any competition? Remember the chasm? I'll put a link to it in the notes below. But in the chasm from Geoffrey Moore, we learned that in the very early stages of any kind of market, you just don't have any competition. You're the only one providing this innovative new solution. Nobody else can. And in that circumstance, you just don't have any competition. So the first question is, do you have competition? And the second question is, who are they? Really? In this blog, I'm going to show you how to select the right competitors to focus on and how to needle their weaknesses and avoid having your own weaknesses needled back. Let's start by looking at who your competitors are. If you're in a really mature market where the buyers already know what they need, they're just trying to work out whose product or service they're going to buy to meet that need, and the buyers shape their own concept of what they need, and your job is just to provide a solution, then your competitors are other like vendors. But if you manage to get your buyers a little bit earlier at the need definition stage, you've got a good opportunity to change their concept of what it is that they need. And very likely there's other ways to solve or to meet the need than just what they might have thought about. And often in those circumstances, your competitors are not just like companies, but also dissimilar organisations who can meet the need in a slightly different way. What if you get the buyer even earlier still, when they're at the troubled stage? You know, I'm troubled about this problem, and then I know what I need, and then I'm looking at your product. We've taken one step back. What if we took a couple of steps back and got back to the gap stage? If you can help shape the concept, the buyer's concept of what the problem is that they ought to be solving at all, then you're dealing with a different set of competitors again. Now, a good salesperson's going to do that anyway, even for the really mature buyer who says, I want X, do you have X? A good salesperson is going to bring them back a step, shape the concept of the need, and maybe back a step further, even shape the concept of what their problem is at all. And a good marketer is going to do the same thing. Clearly they'll use different devices, different mechanisms, different tactics, but we need to bring the buyer back to the problem stage. So the question isn't, who else does what I do? That's how we traditionally think about competitors. It's not what I want to encourage you to think about. Instead, who else can solve the problem that I'm focused on solving? Because that's who you have to beat. So who then is your real competition? Well, let's start with the question I asked you earlier. Do you even have competition? Or is the market at a stage of immaturity where there just aren't any other ways to solve this problem right now? Now, if you do have competition, then I want to encourage you to think like a buyer and not like a seller. What is it that you need to solve this problem? Who else can solve this problem? Think about the buyer. If you're faced with that problem, who are all of the vendors that you would go talk to try to find a way to solve that problem? Don't just think about like-minded companies. Frequently, the other ways to solve the problem are with completely alternative solutions. Also include in your list, and you might, by the way, create quite a long list. Make sure you include in that list, do it yourself. Because often, particularly in professional services, the other way I could solve this problem is with my own people, my own labour, my own ideas, my own technology. So who else can solve the problem is the question, not who does what I do. So we need to get a long list of all of the possible providers of a solution to that problem and all the different ways it can be solved, including do it yourself and maybe even do nothing. Maybe that's a big competitor. Get the long list together and identify the 5 of those alternative solutions that you believe are the most threatening for you, the most viable for the customer, and then rate them. In a moment or two, I'm going to show you how we do that rating in the funnel plan. But before that, I'm going to do 2 other things. Firstly, I'll share with you the conclusion. That is, how do we rate competitors and set a strategy according to those strengths and weaknesses that we identify. I'll also invite you to receive more blogs like this. But let's get to the conclusion first. Let me show you how we rate each of the competitors, identify their weaknesses, your weaknesses, and build strategies to address that. I'm going to invite you to ask 5 questions of each of the competitors. I'll list them out shortly. But first I want to say what we're not going to do. We're not going to build a SWOT, a strength, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. The problem with SWOT is that it invites some often arbitrary thinking. Well, their strength is this. Well, that actually may not matter as a strength. Or it might genuinely be a strength, but it still may not matter because it's not a big enough strength. I'm going to give you a different way of thinking about strengths and weaknesses. And let's start firstly with share. The question is this. Think about all of the companies who've previously solved the problem that you want to focus on. Let's say there's 100 of them. Market might be 1,000, but 100 companies have already solved this problem one way or another, well or poorly. Out of those 100 companies, look at the 6 competitors, you and the 5 others. Who out of those 6 has solved the problem the most often? So out of the 100 companies who have solved the problem, would maybe 5 or 6 or 10 of them have been solved by this company? Give them a 10, because they are, on the factor of share, they are the strongest. Give them a 10. Who's solved the problem the least often? Give them a 1, maybe. And use other rating systems to identify who has already solved this problem before and they've gained reputation and history and knowledge, momentum, enthusiasm. We're looking for, the first question is share, and out of all of the companies, the buyers who've solved this problem before, which of your 6 competitors have done it the most often? You're going to give them a 10 and others rate accordingly. Next question is your unique selling proposition or USP. Who out of the 6 companies, you and the 5 others, who are competing for the right to solve that problem, who has got the greatest answer to that problem, the most compelling answer to that problem? Give them a 10. By the way, if it's not you, you better have a strategy later on for addressing that. Who is it that has the best solution? Give them a 10. Weakest solution, give them somewhere between a 1 and a 5. And rate your other strength, the other USPs for the other competitors. Third question, recognition. How well does the market recognise those strengths that are in the USP? You might have the most amazing product, but the market doesn't know it. You're going to rate yourself very poorly on that factor of recognition. So we're not asking about brand recognition generally, but recognition as a solution to solve that problem. Who would the market go, aha, you got that problem? You better be talking to these people. Give them a 10. Rate everybody else. That's recognition. Next one, cost. I'm going to do this fairly briefly. It is slightly complex. Cost and price are fundamentally different things. As a vendor, I'm going to charge you a certain price when I sell you a product. My costs are my own business. And I want to ask you a question about cost, not price. Okay? Who out of those 6 companies has the lowest cost base to solve that problem? Maybe they've got offshore labour, maybe they've got some clever technology. They're factors that will give one company a cost advantage over the others. They may not change their price. They might actually meet the market price, but have a cost advantage. What I'm looking for is which of those 6 companies has the greatest cost advantage? Give them a 10, then rate the others. Final question is references. Now, although we've kind of alluded to references in share, and we've kind of alluded to references, I guess, in recognition, this is a quite distinct question. Who can tell the best story about having solved the problem before? These guys might have great share, but their customers are not happy, so they can't tell a good story. Who can tell the best I've done it before story? Give them a 10. Who can tell the weakest story? Give them between a 1 and a 5, let's say. Rate the others. What you now end up with is a grid that describes the strengths and the weaknesses according to those 5 factors for the 6 companies. And now you can work out, what should we do? Pick just the most important strengths and the most important weaknesses and build a strategy to address those. We don't need to deal with every competitor, and we don't need to deal with every strength and weakness. Just the biggest strengths and the biggest weaknesses for you and the competitors, and we need to build a strategy to address those weaknesses if they're ours, or to take advantage of our strengths if we have them. If you got value from this blog, then I'd like to invite you to subscribe to receive more updates about future blogs. If you go to mathmarketing.com/blog, you'll find there's 2 options. Firstly, you can subscribe to Funnel Vision blog, which comes out twice a week. Once is this video blog that you're watching now, plus 1 textual blog. You can do that anonymously. You can go to mathmarketing.com/blog and subscribe to the Funnel Vision blog. Comes out twice a week. Now, the other one is Funnel Vision Monthly. Monthly, you do have to fess up to your details. So what am I going to do? Send you an email? You know, it's okay. It's us. So the monthly is going to give you, we've been doing it as something of an editor's grab, but we're going to shift to actually sending you all of the blogs that we've accumulated during the month, the best of them, and send you that. So there'll be at least 4 included in that one email once a month. Now, again, you do have to give your details for the monthly. For the weekly blog, you don't need to give us your details, but you're going to get a little less. So anyway, go to mathmarketing.com/blog and choose your path, whichever of those you'd like to receive. A lot of people choose both, and you're very welcome to do that. I promised you I was going to show you how we do that in Funnel Plan, so let's take a look at that now. Firstly, let's take a look where competition sits in the Funnel Plan. It's kind of right up here in the top right-hand corner. The competition is an important part of strategy. First question though, remember I've asked it a couple of times today, do you even have any competition? If you don't, then you're probably going to want to hide the competitive analysis and instead just use that in the Funnel Plan as a general notes section. Let me show you quickly how we do that. So you can hide the competition section, and let's take a quick look at a funnel plan that doesn't include the competition. And you can compare that to one that does include the competition. There you have it. Now, let's assume that you do have competition that you want to rate and build a strategy around. So we go to the competition section, provided it's been enabled, and we go to the competition section and you're going to enter the names of your competitors, and then you're going to rate each of the competitors on each of these factors, 1 factor at a time. Start with share, then move on to USP. For each of these, share, who has the greatest share, give them a 10, the weaker one, give them between a 1 and a 5. And do that for each of the factors. And you see this little guy, the sensitivity indicator here? What that lets you do is you can work out, do I want to think of only 3 or 4 strengths and weaknesses, or do I want 10 or 15? You can adjust this sensitivity so that it only shows you the greatest strengths and weaknesses. Fiddle around with that until it looks about right and you've got a meaningful number of competitive strengths and weaknesses to focus on. You can't focus on everything. And then build a strategy for doing so. Now in the made up example that I've got here, you can see that there are 2 companies, us and one other, that actually have almost opposing strengths. So one of the strategies is to consider teaming with them. I know they're a competitor, but could you actually be teaming with them, and instead of having, I'll make a number up here, 10% of the competition of the market each, maybe between you can get not 20 but 30 or 40 because you could be so strong. It's an opportunity to think a little laterally. Anyhow, build the strategy to take advantage of any strengths, overcome any weaknesses, and to needle any of those competitive weaknesses that you've identified that others have. And that's how you do it in Funnel Plan. How do you translate your strategy into a plan of action? I'll show you that on another day. But for now, may your funnel be full and always flowing.